Mace Windu was not like other Jedi. He didn't reject emotion the way that they did. He didn't fear it. He chose to study it, analyze it, control it, but most importantly, Mace Windu acknowledged it. That acknowledgement made him dangerous, not because he flirted with the dark side, but because he understood that it was already inside of him, as it was in every Jedi who fought to suppress it. Windu recognized something most in the Order were too rigid to admit. The darkness could not be exiled by code or mantra. The darkness had to be faced, held in the palm of your hand, examined. And Mace Windu, he was a Jedi that chose to hold it. Windu's greatest strength wasn't in his power, it was in his clarity. But that clarity was shaped by contradiction. He held deep faith in the Jedi Order, yet developed a personal attachment to the Republic, not just as an institution, but as an ideal. Mace Windu believed that it could be saved, that the Jedi still had a purpose, and that belief became emotional, passionate, personal. Anakin Skywalker hid his attachments, Windu acknowledged his. And in doing so, Mace Windu became one of the most vulnerable Jedi in the entire Order. Vulnerable not in weakness, but in proximity to danger. Windu was closer to the edge than any Jedi Master, and still he refused to fall. But Windu wasn't content on relying on willpower alone. He needed a way to survive the war within himself, something more than meditation, more than restraint. And so Mace Windu created a weapon. He called that weapon Vapad, or Vapad. Vapad was not just a lightsaber form. It wasn't just simply a method of fighting. It was an act of spiritual engineering, a framework to confront his own capacity for rage, and to use it without surrendering to it. He based it loosely on Juyo, the seventh form and aggressive erratic style that the Jedi had long deemed far too dangerous, even going as far to forbid its practice in the Order. Juyo lacked discipline. It gave in too easily to passion, to anger. But Windu saw in it potential. He took its raw chaos and sharpened it into something focused, purposeful. Vapad wasn't about blind aggression. It was about rhythm, control, pressure, and it was built on a single idea. If you channel the darkness of your enemy, you can turn it back against them. Vapad was designed not to generate power from within, but to complete a circuit with the dark side opponent across from you. The more fury they poured into the duel, the more energy Vapad could reflect back. But here's the catch. To do that, the user had to be absolutely grounded. Not emotionless, but centered. Windu did not deny his emotions. He turned them into a current, one that flowed through him but did not linger. He wasn't trying to be the perfect Jedi. He was trying to be the Jedi who could survive imperfection. The Council was cautious by this though. They had great reason to be. Juyo was already a form that pushed Jedi to the brink. To take it further felt like heresy. But Windu didn't hide what he was doing. He brought it to them. He argued for it. And to the surprise of many, Yoda was the one who approved it. Not out of blind trust, not because he believed it should be taught widely, but because he saw Windu clearly. A man walking on the edge who had found his way to stay balanced. And so Vapad became Windu's personal method of survival. Not a form to be passed down, not a technique for the archives, but a razor-thin line forged out of a need, and crossed only by him. Windu used it rarely, only when necessary, only when confronting darkness so intense that it could not be ignored. Sith Lords, traitors, murderers, people whose rage could fuel the loop. Vapad was not a rejection of Jedi teachings, it was a reinterpretation. A new way to deal with the emotional cost of fighting in a galaxy where morality was becoming harder to define. It allowed Windu to walk through the shadows without being swallowed by them. But it also meant this: if Windu ever lost control even for a moment, there would be no turning back. It was a permanent contract, and Windu knew it. And more, he accepted it. Because to him, losing control was worth the risk if it meant finding a way to stand toe-to-toe with the dark side, and to win. Vapad is extremely misunderstood. First, we have to discuss its philosophy and its function, the final and the most dangerous of the classic styles. But simply calling it a combat technique misses the point. Vapad wasn't just how Mace Windu fought, it was how he survived the fight. It was not elegant like Makashi. It was not defensive like Sarisu. It wasn't even brutal like Jem So. Vapad was something else, something new. At its core, it was all about pressure. Relentless, unbroken, accelerating pressure. The practitioner gives no ground, offers no space to breathe. Every motion flows directly into the next, creating a rhythm of movement so fast and fluid that it becomes nearly impossible to track, let alone defend against. To the observer, thanks to the first-hand account of Anakin Skywalker, he described it as chaos, blades coming from all directions, angles, changing with each and every strike. But to the one wielding it, commanding Vapad, it was harmony. Not harmony in the Jedi sense, but harmony of a different kind. A synchronization between one's inner darkness and the external storm. The secret isn't in the speed, it's in the loop. Mace Windu built Vapad to function like a circuit, what the Revenge of the Sith novelization called a superconducting loop. When a Sith pours hatred, fury, fear into their strikes, a typical Jedi blocks it, and it ends there. Or they fall to it. But a Vapad user doesn't resist that darkness. They absorb it. They don't attempt to stop it. They attempt to channel it. And the Sith's only reaction is more. They become more violent, and the more fuel they give to their opponent. Vapad absorbs that rage and it returns it, not through vengeance, but through rhythm. It makes the dark side user part of the weapon being used against them. Every blow strengthens the person that they are trying to kill. It's a trap, and the longer it goes on, the harder it is to escape. So that's what makes Vapad so uniquely effective against darkside enemies. It thrives on their aggression. Their power is transformed into their weakness. Their hatred becomes ammunition. And if the Jedi using Vapad can hold their center, if they do not fall into the rage themselves, they become nearly unstoppable. But there is one major catch. Most Jedi cannot do this. The emotional pull of combat, especially against someone radiating hatred, can easily overwhelm even the most disciplined minds. The temptation to respond in kind, to match the fury with fury, it's nearly irresistible. But once that line is crossed, Vapad collapses. It ceases to exist. It is no longer a loop, but it becomes a conduit for corruption. That's why it broke Jedi Master Sora Bulk, why it nearly destroyed Depa Billaba. They were skilled, powerful, but they couldn't hold the center. The darkness didn't pass through them, it struck, and it dragged them under. Only Mace Windu kept his footing, not because he was colder or purer, but because he designed Vapad around his weaknesses, not in spite of it. He wasn't trying to become a flawless Jedi, he was trying to build something that allowed him to survive not being one. He didn't rise above the temptation of the dark side. He acknowledged it. He studied it. He built a language around it, and then made himself fluent in its rhythm. That's why Vapad is dangerous, not because of how it moved, but because of what it asked the person wielding it. And here's the real truth. Vapad was never meant for anyone else. It wasn't a style that was meant to be passed on. It was a spiritual pressure valve. A way for Windu to remain functional as a Jedi while carrying the contradictions that would have shattered others. It was built specifically for his struggle. To wield Vapad, you had to confront your own inner darkness, not suppress it, not rationalize it, embrace it, control it, let it flow through you without taking root. Most Jedi would never even attempt this, but Mace Windu lived there. So how did it function really? It functioned as a weapon. Yes, but more importantly, it functioned as a survival mechanism. It gave Windu the clarity to fight Sith on their terms, on their ground. It gave him the means to take his deepest fears and turn it into a tool. In combat, it was devastating, but it was never safe. Vapad demanded perfection in every single moment. Not perfection of technique, but perfection of self-awareness. The second that wavered, the form became a doorway to the very darkness it was designed to contain. And in the end, Vapad wasn't just Windu's greatest creation, it was his confession. Proof that he knew how close he stood to the edge, and that he'd built something powerful enough to let him keep walking. Others saw it as well. Dooku called it an offense to lightsaber combat. He called it one of the ugliest forms he had ever witnessed. Chaotic, unrefined, lacking all the elegance and control that defined Makashi, the dueling art he had spent a lifetime mastering. Where Dooku prized precision, Vapad looked wild. Where he championed grace, Vapad seemed unhinged. He saw it as a brute force technique masquerading as mastery. But Dooku never fought Windu at full strength, and he never understood what the form was really doing. But his master did. Sidious did. He understood it too late. When the duel began in the Chancellor's office, Sidious was confident. He had already struck down 3 Jedi Masters. Windu he had always hated, but he was just another name on the list. But from the moment their sabers clashed, something was wrong, and Sidious could feel it. Windu didn't falter, he didn't hesitate. His movements were not clumsy or desperate, they were controlled, deliberate, and unrelenting. As if he wasn't just fighting Sidious, he was absorbing him. Every surge of dark side energy, every wave of fury the Sith unleashed only fed Windu's rhythm. The battle became a circuit, a loop, and for the first time in the entire Clone Wars, Darth Sidious lost control. He had spent decades manipulating the Jedi, corrupting them, confusing them, making them weaker while pretending to be their ally. But Mace Windu was not confused. He was not vulnerable. He had accepted the truth that Sidious thought would break him, that power could be drawn from darkness without surrendering to it. And that's what made him so lethal. Not just because Vapad let him fight like a Sith without falling, but because he refused to fall even when the Sith Lord was right in front of him. That was the realization that broke Sidious. That was the moment he understood what Vapad truly was. And yet, even as Windu disarmed him, even as the blade rose for the final blow, Vapad could not protect him from the one thing it was not built to handle: betrayal. When Anakin intervened, the circuit broke, the lightning surged, the saber fell, and Mace Windu, the only Jedi who ever mastered the storm, was now gone. His legacy did not end with his death. If anything, it began here. Because Vapad was never passed on. It wasn't taught. It wasn't refined. It remained Mace Windu's, and Mace Windu's alone. A one-man rebellion, a one-man army. Over the years, many fans have speculated that Luke Skywalker, with his clarity, his instinct, his calm in the face of hatred, may have brushed the edge of Vapad in his own duels. He certainly fought in the way that no Jedi had before him, and in at least one convention Q&A, a Legends author hinted that Luke's unique style could be interpreted that way. But even that is just speculation. No one ever truly walked Windu's path again. In the end, Vapad was not a legacy, it was a warning. A perfect weapon forged by a Jedi who knew the only way to survive was to make peace with the war inside yourself. He didn't fall to the dark side. He didn't hesitate in the face of power. He stood at the edge, and when the moment came, he was ready. He just didn't see the knife at his back. In the end, though, the fact remains. Mace Windu created a lightsaber form for one purpose: to destroy the Sith. Not just by matching their power, not just by resisting their corruption, but by reflecting their greatest advantage back at them. For 1,000 years, the Sith had counted on one thing: the Jedi were afraid of them, afraid of the emotions they wielded, afraid of the darkness they embraced, afraid of becoming what they fought. But Mace Windu wasn't. He didn't suppress his fear, he stared into it. He looked into the heart of the abyss, not with hatred, not with arrogance, but with clarity. And not only did he survive, but Mace Windu didn't even flinch. Vapad was that defiance given form, a weapon shaped not from peace, but from purpose. And in that final duel, at the end of the Clone Wars, it was the abyss that blinked. Darth Sidious, master of the dark side, destroyer of empires, quivered in the face of a Jedi who had become the one thing the Sith could never manipulate: unbreakable. Mace Windu died undefeated against a true master of the dark side, and the form he left behind, it didn't survive him, because no one ever stood where he stood, and made the darkness afraid in the way that Mace Windu did. But anyway, my friends, I hope this video helped highlight and document Vapad in a more in-depth way, and I hope that if you didn't quite understand the form before this video, that this helped highlight and better your understanding of it overall. But as always, my friends, thank you so much for watching the channel and the archives here today, and as always, may the Force be with you.